When I moved here, people would always make the joke, oh, Aliyah made Aliyah. That does mean the same as moving to Israel, going up, ascending, kind of entering a higher consciousness. So first of all, it was a name picked by my parents because they're like, wow, we thought it was a beautiful name. Little do they know that it would become my fate moving here.
I moved here from Rochester, New York, 6 years ago. I'm right now looking for work. I can see that the language is a big part, learning Hebrew, and I have been able to learn Hebrew, but it took some time.
I made Aliyah to Israel when I was 15 years old, and it was a very hard process when we came. The story isn't over when you get on a plane and come here. It's not over. The problems really begin.
I was born in Crimea, in Soviet Union, and of course I grew up with a dream to leave Soviet Union one day and to go to free world and to come to Israel.
I grew up in North America, outside Boston. I'm married and I have 4 children. In America, I was a school nurse at a Jewish day school. And here I'm just being a mom and a new immigrant, which is definitely a full-time job to be a new immigrant.
So I think it was sort of several events that influenced my decision to come here. We grew up in a household that was very Jewish culturally. Both of our parents are rabbis, so we grew up in the synagogue, surrounded by that. But Israel or Zionism was never really talked about. My grandma nearly made Aliyah, or immigrated to Israel, in 1947, I think. So there was an influence, but it wasn't pushed on us at all. And then, really, it happened when I went to college and I got more involved in the Jewish and pro-Israel community that I started to learn about this beautiful country. So I did a year abroad here and met amazing people and totally fell in love with the culture. And that influenced me to want to immigrate here in 2010.
And I was born in a Jewish family, but not a religious family. When I grew up, we had no churches and no synagogues. So I grew up in atheistic environment, but somehow I always believed in God, and that is very special. By the age of 18, I really was looking for God. I really was searching and praying even more. It was a time of uncertainty, and I really got lots of questions. I was happy with my life, and I just married with my wife, and we thought, maybe one day, because we are Jewish, so maybe one day when we're going to retire, we will go to our homeland and we will move to Israel. But of course, God changed our plans, and just in the middle of all our plans, He showed up and showed us all the scriptures and spoke to our hearts, time to move. And here we are.
I moved here with my parents, and also my sister lives here. She's married and has 2 kids. Really, I'm happy that I've been able to move here and transition, and yeah, that it's been a challenging time, but also a very good time. And
Well, I grew up in a family that was very Zionistic, not in a way of like people would come and make Aliyah. I'm the first person in my family. My husband was probably the big mover and shaker. He has been very, very patient in his life. He came when he was like 20, and he wanted to stay then and ended up going back to America. And then when we were married and we had 2 small children, we came for 6 months. And we had only planned for it to be 6 months, but he very much wanted to stay, and I very much wasn't ready. And then you get to the point where your kids are old enough so we felt like if we didn't do it at this year, then we were gonna wait till we were retired, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to come now.
The Jewish nation developed during their exile in Egypt around the year 1800 BCE. After living about 400 years in Egypt, the Jews returned to the land of Canaan, the land that God had promised to their ancestor Abraham as their eternal heritage. The second biblical exile took the Jews to Babylon around the year 600 BCE. Then, during the Roman Empire in the year 70 CE, the Jewish people were once again scattered among the nations to the four corners of the world. But, beginning in the late 19th century, a modern-day exodus began, with Jews once again returning to the Promised Land. Israel is a tiny nation with a population of some 8.5 million, a mere 424 kilometers, or 263 miles from north to south, and only 15 kilometers, or 9 miles at its narrowest point. But in spite of this insignificance, Israel is constant front-page news.
Israel was never easy country to live in. When you come as a tourist, it's nice, lots of fun, biblical heritage, just beautiful country and beautiful beach like in my city. So it's nice for tourists. But when you come to live here, Bible called Israel a country country of milk and honey. But to have been able to use milk and honey as a local person, as a local citizen, you have to work hard.
I think what people don't know about Israel is that it's the only democracy in the Middle East, and the rights that people have in Israel are unparalleled in the Middle East. Like lesbian and gay community here, full equal rights. Arabs who are Israeli citizens have full equal rights. I think sometimes the media portrayals of Israel and what's the reality are so very, very different. It's sad.
It's just really important to form your opinions based on facts and real experiences rather than regurgitating what the media tells you to, which, as I've been learning in school, often has an agenda.
I think the land of Israel is a place that's certainly not perfect, but we have to protect our land here from those that are, as you can see, the land of Israel surrounded by all nations that want to kill us, and it's God's plan to protect this nation.
For much of their history, the Jewish people have been dispersed among the nations of the world, but in their isolated communities, they still maintain their traditions, a kosher diet, a calendar of celebrated holy days and feasts. And in spite of other societal norms that surrounded them, the diaspora Jews always kept the Jewish Sabbath, a weekly time of rest and worship from sundown on Friday until sundown Saturday. But in Israel, the Sabbath is universally observed throughout the nation, especially in Jerusalem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Asharet, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchi Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem leshalom, Malachi Ashalom, Malachi Elyon. Mi melech malchei amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruchuni leshalom malachei Asher. ברוך אתה השם, אלוקינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן, אמן. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו, לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך.
Since the birth of modern Israel in 1948, more than 3 million Jews have moved back to the land, arriving from all points on the globe, from Iraq to Morocco, from China to India, from America to the former Soviet Union, from France to Ethiopia, literally from across the four corners of the world. Moving to Israel means getting accustomed to a new way of life.
We lived here in this apartment for about 3.5 weeks with like literally nothing. I had taken like 2 pots and 2 knives and a colander for pasta in my suitcase, and we had a folding table and 4 chairs that we borrowed from somebody, and we slept on air mattresses, and that was literally all we had. So it's been very pleasant to have like our sofas and our stuff and our beds and our blankets here from America. It's been very comforting.
I'd say the attitude of people is different here. There's maybe less patience sometimes, and just it's very fast-paced. It's different here living in Jaffa because it's right in the city and there's lots of noise, but it feels like a home, and feels like the people are friendly, and it's very much family-based here. And I can say, maybe coming from the US, that it wasn't so based on such family because people like their personal space. But here in the Middle East, you don't have a lot of personal space. You know, you're interacting with people all the time. Before I moved here, I had visited once or twice, so I knew a little bit of what it was like. But I guess I expected it to be maybe more similar to America or Europe, and to not be so difficult actually to integrate.
I'm extremely punctual. I'm always on time, even if I know the other people won't be on time. I can't break myself of the habit to show up when we've agreed upon. So bringing with me those expectations and coming here, you either have to drop them or you'll go crazy.
I'm in Ulpan. I go to intensive Hebrew class every morning for 4.5 hours, 5 days a week. It's amazing. It's really, really helpful for the language skills, but also for the social piece, because almost everyone there is a new immigrant. And we're a very diverse group. In my group, we have people who are not religious, people who are religious, people who are from Russia, from the Ukraine, France. It's like a very, very nice mix of people. And so life feels, it's certainly challenging, but it's very, very beautifully easy in so many ways.
Some of the greatest survivors are the Ethiopian Jews. More than 20,000 of them moved to Israel during 2 secret operations carried out by the Israeli government in 1984 and 1991. While boarding the planes, many of them didn't even know their destination. After arriving in Israel, they faced a completely new reality, encountering a very modern society, a foreign language, and unfamiliar family hierarchies. While their elders struggled in their new home, the younger generation of Ethiopian Jews found it easier to blend into Israeli society. The Jewish Agency of the State of Israel helps with the return to the land, a journey known as Aliyah. The agency works to help immigrants, starting with language classes in modern Hebrew. Chaim Mailspin, who made Aliyah from America as a teenager, remembers his own challenges as a new citizen. Today, he helps other newcomers assimilate into Israeli life.
You have to find a house, you have to learn a language, you have to know, do I have to go to the army? How do I get married? Everything.
This young entrepreneur founded the Aliyah Return Center in his home city of Tiberias. The center also provides accommodation and support for immigrants. Chaim is also working with the Jewish Agency. He's expanding the Return Center in a former boarding school by the Jordan River.
We have joined together with the Jewish Agency, and that's the one who does the Aliyah and the absorption of Israel. We joined together with them, and we have now begun to lease this property. We are going to fix it up. We're going to all put our hands to the shovels and paint brushes and bring in contractors, and we are going to see this place again fulfill.
The wish next year in Jerusalem is a recurring theme in Jewish prayers. Each person has his or her own personal reasons for moving to Israel. Recently, many Jews have moved from France because of anti-Semitism. The exodus from Ukraine has increased because of unrest on its borders, and the faltering Russian economy has pushed Jews there to leave for Israel. Israel Pachter moved from Crimea, Ukraine in 1995. He was part of a wave of over 1 million immigrants from the former Soviet Union. Through numerous discussions with people who made Aliyah in those years, he made an astonishing observation. Most of the immigrants were drawn to Israel by a similar, uncanny attraction.
They would say, I don't know, just something changed in one day, and my life in the country just became meaningless. When I think of future, I can see my future only in Israel. When I think about Israel, I feel light, I feel joy, I feel good. And if I think staying here, I feel kind of darkness, and I just know it's time to move. Many people really moved because they felt it. They totally atheists, not believers of any kind, but they felt something inside, and they felt like we need to move. And many would justify it, saying like, for the future of our kids, for the future of our nation, to keep our identity. But I can tell you, it was a really move of God.
And that idea of yearning for Zion and wanting to come back here has stuck with us from the exile throughout the diaspora. So, the birth of modern Zionism with Herzl is just another manifestation of that.
Thousands of years ago, the Tanakh, the holy scripture of the Jews, predicted the Jewish exodus from among the nations back to Israel. This is mentioned in the Bible more than 70 times, in Deuteronomy and the Psalms, as well as by many of the prophets, including Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel.
Bible speaks a lot, specifically about exodus from the northern countries. If you go north from Israel, you come in first to Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, then Eastern Europe, Ukraine, and Russia. And actually, it's going straight to Moscow, which really represents all the Soviet Union countries and Russian-speaking world. So actually, I found there is many scriptures speaks about Aliyah, or movement of God, because God's saying always, I will cause them, I will cause Jewish people to come back to land of Israel. I will do all kind of miracles. I will take them out. And it's been growing in my heart, and I felt like, wow, Bible speaks about me.
You know what, the way that I always learned it is that Israel is really the place that all the Jews should be trying to live. And I'm really pleased to be a part of it. You know, I don't know, does it mean Mashiach is coming and that I'm being here? You know, I wish I could say yes, but I don't know. I'm not learned enough to say that.
It says in Jeremiah 31, verse 8, even if they are in the farthest places, from there I will gather them back here. So that's talking about now. You know that back in the time of Egypt, God sent Moses, and he said, I'm bringing the children of Israel out of slavery, out of anti-Semitism, and great miracles happened. The Red Sea parted, you know, and the Jordan River also parted, and they came into the Promised Land. We are living in a special time in history, a time that has never happened before on this scale.
I can see that there is a plan for this land, and the fact that so many different people have immigrated to this land also shows that it's a very special place.
Speaking about conflict here with the Arabs, or probably right way to say Muslims, maybe even better to say radical Muslims. To understand this conflict, we need to go back to history. And what happening here, it's not just conflict between people, but in our case, in case of Israel, the conflict is spiritual. It's going all the way back to the Bible, the envy between Isaac and Ishmael, and it's an old story.
The distinct identity of the Jews has set them apart from other nations. Perhaps this could explain some of the hostility directed against the Jewish people.
A lot of times Jews, and this is part of the heritage wherever we've been, whether that's Poland or Morocco or the United States, vary within our own community. And this disinterest in assimilating has frustrated a lot of people in the countries, which of course leads to anti-Jewish sentiments. So I never felt discriminated against, but I did feel very happy when I was within the Jewish community, because there's a certain cycle of the year with holidays and food and traditions and religion that you kind of blend into. So it's nice that when you're here, you don't have to explain if you need Passover off or there's a certain life event in your family.
And also to finally feel like you're part of the majority. For all my life, I was in the minority. I went to a school with 4 Jewish kids. It's so nice for my kids not to feel that.
The government of Israel estimates that nearly half of the world's Jews already live in Israel. The Jewish people are like birds in flight, crisscrossing the sky in different directions. But as birds instinctively fly south when winter approaches, so too Jews from around the world are drawn towards Israel, as the world's opinion becomes colder and hardened against them.
I've always said that, Israel needs to be here because you never know when Jews will have to leave their country. We've seen this recently in Ukraine. We've seen it with France. We just brought over some of the last Jews of Yemen who were being threatened to death. So, it's important that it's here because America's safe, and people say it always will be safe, and I do believe that, but you never know. You never know when having a safe haven will be a good thing.